Inside Buckingham Palace, a quiet decision is taking shape that could reshape the modern monarchy. And at the center of it stands a woman most people overlooked for 50 years. King Charles is reportedly considering handing Princess Anne a role far larger than her title suggests.
In the terms of my role, I have a role as Colonel of the Blues and Rolls in the Household Cavalry Regiment, as Gold Stick.
Closer to real power than any royal sibling in living memory. Not the queen, not the heir, his sister. Behind palace walls, the reasons are said to run deeper than illness or convenience, touching trust, history, and a bond few outsiders understand. What Charles may be preparing to do could quietly change everything. The red box. So here is the question almost nobody stops to ask. When a king cannot be in the room, who does he actually trust to act in his name? Because that, not the crown, not the balcony waves, is where the real power in this family lives. And right now, according to people who follow the royal family closely, the answer keeps pointing to one name, Anne Elizabeth Alice Louise, the Princess Royal, the king's only sister. There is a physical object at the center of all this, and it is not a symbol, the sovereign's red box. Every single day it lands in front of the monarch carrying the real business of the country, classified briefings, draft legislation, papers from the intelligence services, the machinery of the United Kingdom locked inside a single case. It is the most direct, tangible piece of constitutional power that exists in Britain, and whoever opens it is, in that quiet moment, helping to run the country. When the monarch cannot get to it, the law names a small circle of senior royals who can step in for him, the counselors of state. Camilla, as queen, is technically one of them. But if what the palace watchers are saying is true, the steady hand Charles reaches for is not his wife. It is his sister, a woman who has spent 50 years being underestimated by almost everyone outside those gates. And to understand how a king ends up trusting his sister over his own wife with the working heart of the monarchy, you have to understand what has been quietly coming apart behind the palace doors, and what Charles decided to do about it before anyone was really watching. The hidden pressure. Why would a king need a stand-in at all? Here is the part that makes this real. In early 2024, Buckingham Palace confirmed that King Charles had been diagnosed with cancer, and he chose to be far more open about it than any monarch before him. People responded with real sympathy. And to his credit, he never hid behind palace walls the way monarchs before him would have. But sympathy does not solve the problem underneath it. A king cannot sit through medical treatment and carry the full daily weight of governing at the same time. Something has to give, so someone somewhere close to him has to fill the gap, and it has to be someone he trusts without reservation. And the obvious name, the one the line of succession practically shouts, is Prince William. He is the heir. He is the future. On paper, he should be the one absorbing the load while his father heals. Why not William? But paper and real life are two different things. In the same stretch that Charles was in treatment, Catherine, the Princess of Wales, was facing her own cancer diagnosis and fighting her way through recovery. William has 3 young children who need their father present, George, Charlotte, and Louis. And he is already carrying something invisible and enormous, the knowledge that the crown is coming for him, that every move he makes now is rehearsal for a job he will hold until the day he dies. Pile a stand-in king's duties on top of all that, and you do not just tire him out. You could break him, and a broken heir is the one thing no monarchy survives. Charles knows it. More than that, he respects it. He is not going to trade his son's stability or his grandchildren's father for the sake of protocol. So, he looked past the obvious answer. He went hunting for someone with the memory, the credibility, the sheer institutional muscle, and the one quality that makes real power genuinely safe to hand over. No ambition of their own. He looked at Anne. And if this is already surprising you, if you walked in certain you knew where the power in this family sits, stay close, because it only gets stranger from here. The deeper you go into how Anne actually earned this, the more the familiar version of the monarchy falls apart. If these are the threads you love pulling on, take a second and subscribe, because the palace never lays any of this out plainly, and connecting the dots the way we are about to is the entire reason this channel exists. What comes next is where it stops being about circumstance and starts being about who she really is. Why Anne fits. Anne did not stumble into this. She was built for it, slowly, across a lifetime. Start simple. She is only about 2 years younger than Charles, which means she did not read about the great turning points of this reign's backdrop in a briefing. She lived through them, in the room or near it, as they happened. She sat through the same decades, the same near disasters, the same slow shifts in how the country sees the family she was born into. That kind of memory cannot be manufactured. It cannot be briefed into someone in an afternoon. And in a genuine crisis, it is worth more than any title anyone could hand you. Then there is the thing almost nobody weighs properly, and it may matter most of all. Anne has no path to the throne and no hunger for one. In ordinary politics, you would want ambition, but in royal politics, the absence of it is everything. The oldest danger in handing power to someone near the crown is that they use it to climb, to build a faction, to position their own people, and that is exactly how dynasties rot from the inside. Anne is immune to all of it. Under the old male preference rules she grew up under, she got quietly shoved down the line every time a brother was born. She got bumped again and again by a system that valued a brother's birth over her own. And instead of resenting it for 40 years, letting it curdle into bitterness the way it easily could have, she simply accepted it and went to work, harder and quieter than anyone around her. So, when she carries a message from the king to the prime minister, nobody in that room wonders what she is really after. There is no faction behind her, no bloc using her as a vehicle. She is the messenger, and everyone knows it. In a world where every glance gets read for a hidden motive, that kind of transparency is almost priceless. An old entanglement. And here her story stops being only about duty and turns into something far more human. Go back to the early 1970s, long before Camilla was queen, before she was even a Parker Bowles. Back then she was Camilla Shand, and she was seeing a cavalry officer named Andrew Parker Bowles, the very same Andrew Parker Bowles who, at that exact moment, was close to Princess Anne. Anne and Parker Bowles shared a real bond, built on the horses and the equestrian world they both lived for. And by most accounts, there was genuine feeling between them. But it could not go anywhere permanent. He was Catholic, and the conventions around the royal family then simply would not allow it. So it ended, the way these things ended back then, without drama, without a public word. Anne married Mark Phillips. Parker Bowles married Camilla, and years later, the two of them divorced. Charles and Camilla eventually found each other, and the woman, once tied to a man Anne had loved, became queen. It is a tangled, painfully human history, and it is the quiet backdrop to everything unfolding now. Camilla holding the crown and the title, and Anne holding the one thing the crown can never confer and no title can buy, the trust of the king himself, built not in a palace, but across a lifetime of showing up when it counted. And the moment that trust became official is where this story turns sharp. Charles's own move. There is a popular version of this story that gets the biggest fact wrong, and the truth is better than the myth. People love to say that Queen Elizabeth, in her final weeks, quietly arranged all of this for Anne. She did not. Elizabeth died in September 2022, and the decisive move came afterward from Charles himself. In November 2022, barely into his reign, the new king sent a formal message to both houses of parliament asking them to change the law so that Anne and his younger brother Edward could be made councillors of state. Parliament moved fast, and the Councillors of State Act became law that December. The problem it fixed was real. The people already legally allowed to stand in for the king had become a liability. Harry had stepped back and moved abroad. Andrew was radioactive after his scandals, a name the palace now works to keep as far from power as it can. If something happened to Charles, some of the people technically able to wield his power were the last people on earth he would ever want near it. So he closed the gap through Parliament, which made it legally untouchable and impossible to quietly reverse. And he wrote his sister into the emergency machinery of the crown permanently. Not for a season, not conditionally, but for the rest of her life. That was not a grieving mother's parting gift. That was a king telling the country, on the record, exactly who he trusts. Signals and titles. Once you know to look, the clues have been sitting in plain sight for decades. In June 1987, Queen Elizabeth made Anne the Princess Royal, one of the oldest titles in the entire hierarchy, held by only one woman at a time, traditionally the sovereign's eldest daughter. And it carries a quiet expectation that most people miss, that whoever holds it has handed her whole life to the crown, completely, permanently. not only when the cameras are rolling or the schedule is light. It was Elizabeth's formal way of saying her daughter belonged in a category of her own. In November 2000, Anne was appointed to the Order of the Thistle, the oldest and highest order of chivalry in Scotland, a gift that sits entirely in the sovereign's hands and is never given lightly, earned here through years of real, unglamorous work north of the border, the kind that never trends and never makes a front page, but that a nation notices all the same. And then came the coronation. In May 2023, at Westminster Abbey, when Charles was crowned, he named Anne his gold stick in waiting, a role centuries old and traditionally handed to the single person the monarch trusts with his own safety. Which is exactly why she was there behind that coach, in uniform, on horseback, guarding her brother in front of the entire watching world. That was not decoration. That was Charles telling everyone, without saying a word, who has his back. The man beside her. You cannot tell Anne's story without the man who has stood beside her for more than 30 years, Vice Admiral Sir Timothy Lawrence. He came into this world in the mid-1980s as a young naval officer chosen to serve as an equerry to Queen Elizabeth, a post he held from 1986 to 1989. He was not chasing visibility. He was there to work, watching the inner machinery of the household up close. He and Anne married in December 1992. What Elizabeth saw, and what Charles clearly prizes, is the way he backs his wife, quietly, relentlessly, never needing the light on himself. Anne is widely considered the hardest working member of the entire family, year after year, out-engaging almost everyone else in it. And a schedule like that needs a partner who can absorb the pressure and keep everything steady underneath. Lawrence has done exactly that for decades without a single word of complaint and without ever once trying to step into her spotlight. He is proof that the strongest support in that family has never been the loudest. In 2011, Elizabeth made him a Knight Commander of the Royal Victorian Order. Charles went further. In August 2025, in a private ceremony at Balmoral, he advanced Lawrence to Knight Grand Cross of that order, its very highest rank, an honor in the monarch's personal gift alone, and the first time any member of the royal family had reached that grade since Catherine received it in 2019. In one quiet ceremony, a man with no official working title was placed on a level with the most senior figures in the household. It was Charles saying, plainly, that he sees the partnership holding Anne up, and that he honors it. What William thinks. One of the loudest signals in this whole story is a quiet one, the way William and Catherine have reacted. Both have been openly, visibly behind Anne's bigger role. William especially is understood to see his aunt as a kind of shield for the entire institution. Her reputation for integrity and plain hard work is so bulletproof that her being near the center actually protects everyone around her from suspicion. Think about that coming from the future king. He is effectively saying Anne makes the monarchy safer just by standing where she stands. And at the big public moments, William and Catherine have done something subtle. They have stepped back and let her hold the foreground. That is respect made visible, and it tells everyone watching that the next generation is not competing with Anne. It is standing behind her, deliberately, where the whole country can see it. For William, there is a personal payoff too. Anne carrying weight right now hands him the one thing he needs most: space. To be with Catherine through her recovery. To be a father while his children still need him close. To grow into the enormous role coming for him on a timeline that does not swallow him whole before he ever wears the crown. Anne is not taking anything from William's future. She is protecting it. The honest moment. If there is a single moment that turned public respect for Anne into something warmer, it came in a BBC documentary that followed the family through Charles's coronation year. The film got unusually close during a raw, transitional stretch, and Anne did the thing royals almost never do. She was plainly, disarmingly honest. She spoke about her mother's final days, and about what the crown had actually cost across 70 years, the endless bending of every private wish to the needs of the institution, and the strange, complicated relief of watching that weight finally lift at the very end. It was not staged, it was not performed, it was simply true. And it was a kind of truth people had almost never heard from inside those walls. A woman who had spent a lifetime not showing her feelings, letting the country glimpse them for a moment. And in its plainness, it showed you exactly why she is the right person for this moment. She knows what the institution takes from the people who serve it. Because she has spent her whole life paying that price, and she keeps choosing to pay it anyway. Not for the cameras, not for power, but because somewhere along the way, she decided it was simply the right thing to do and never stopped. That is the woman now standing at the center of everything. What comes next? So step back from all the personalities and look at what this really is. For generations, the palace ran on illusion, a family floating serenely above the mess of ordinary life. Charles has thrown that playbook out. He went public with his cancer. Catherine went public with hers. Instead of hiding the cracks, the monarchy has basically admitted, this is real life, these are real burdens, and here is how we share them. Putting Anne at the center of that is not weakness. It is the most honest thing a modern monarchy could do. Function chosen over performance, substance chosen over spectacle. And when people picture Anne ready to shoulder the daily work of the crown, they feel something the old illusion never once produced. Trust in a specific person, earned over a lifetime. That may be the very thing that carries this monarchy through whatever is coming. So, it all comes down to a few questions the palace will never answer out loud. Camilla holds the crown and the title. Anne, more and more, holds the trust. Does that gap ever close? Is this a permanent statement about where each of them truly stands, or just a fix born of an extraordinary moment? And when William finally inherits, does Anne's role keep growing, or does she step back at last and let the next generation carry it alone? Tell me in the comments which way you think it goes, and what changed your mind about the Princess Royal in the last few minutes. Then subscribe before you leave, because the next chapter of this one is already unfolding, and you are going to want to be here when it breaks.